Welcome to this new edition of the Master in Hispanic Studies lecture series. My name is José Antonio Jiménez Micó. It is my great pleasure and honor to introduce you to Dr. Inés Martinez, Associate Professor of the University of Manitoba. The rigor and originality displayed by Dr. Martinez's research cannot be fully understood without taking into account her social commitment to the groups which have been historically marginalized. Her most recent piece of work, El despertar de las comunidades afro-colombianas, is an excellent evidence of this combination of ethical stance and academic renewal. This exceptional book demonstrates the thorough respect of Dr. Martinez toward the phenomena she studies, in this case the Afro-Colombian community, represented by 5 of its most conspicuous spokespersons. The story lives Dr. Martinez has patiently and minutiously gathered after endless hours of interviews are not simply treated as work material, at least if this means converting them into objects of study. Dr. Martinez does not pretend either represent that community. Instead, she develops a dialogical methodology by which the community leaders become truly subjects of their own speech and their own agenda. Through El Despertar, Dr. Inés Martinez demonstrates in practice that it is possible to overcome the distance between academia and subaltern groups. The distance may be enormous, but instead of renouncing to fill the gap, we can and we must change academia in the direction of a more democratic and egalitarian social order. El Despertar proves by the example that this is feasible and necessary. Far beyond the already extremely valuable inside look into the Afro-Colombian communities in the first years of the 21st century provided by the book, this lesson is the main reason why El Despertar is an obliged work of reference and an example for several fields as subaltern studies, Afro-Colombian, Afro-Latin American studies, or Latin American literary cultural and social studies in general. Please give a warm welcome to Professor Inés Martinez.
Good afternoon. First of all, I wanted to thank Department of Modern Language and Linguistics and Professor Goretti Ramirez and José Antonio Jiménez Micó to make this possible, and thank you, all of you for coming. Today, I wanted to demonstrate how Afro-Colombian communities have become important actors in the country's political life in spite of the tremendous obstacles facing the Afro-Colombian movement since the upsurge of violence in the 1990s. Since the constitutional reform of 1991, we can speak of a political movement that has brought Black communities from a state of invisibility to play an important role on the national and international scene. Leaders of Afro-Colombian movement have managed to maintain their demands and the recognition of collective land rights of their communities. While Colombia is a well-known country for its involvement in the illicit drug trade, I would like to share a few lesser-known but equally important facts. An armed conflict has raged in Colombia for the past 50 years. This conflict has created, since 1990, nearly 3 million displaced people or internal refugees. Colombia has the worst human rights record of any country in the Americas, and the authors of atrocities continue to enjoy near total impunity. Dissent is a risky business in Colombia. More trade unionists have been killed over the past 20 years than in any other country. A left-wing political party, the Patriotic Union, saw over 4,000 of his members assassinated in the 1980s and 1990s. Colombia maintained a facade of a formal democracy. A Jesuit priest and human rights advocate, Javier Giraldo, described Colombia in his book Guerra o Democracia as a genocidal democracy. Yet, in spite of such a high levels of repression, popular social movements, unionists, peasants, indigenous, and Afro-Colombians continue to resist. Colombia has a tremendous cultural and ethnic diversity. Well, there is no consensus on the exact numbers. Between 10 or 25% of the Colombians are Afro-descendant. I would like to show a map that is going to show where are the Afro-Colombians located. So in the dark red areas on this map, they show the highest density of the Afro-Colombian population. They live mainly in the Pacific and the Atlantic coast and in the island of San Andres and Providencia, which are here represented, San Andres and Providencia. I think this map is, I assume it's 10 years before, because now we have a lot more Afro-Colombian in the urban areas, like in Bogota, because we have a lot of displaced people now that came from these Pacific areas, especially, the Pacific areas, and we're going to talk about them. I want to also show some other maps of the northwestern part, which is here, which is El Chocó, and then a map of this part, which is here, El Valle. And those are Pacific areas where there are a lot of Black communities. In this area, in the Pacific, which is Nariño here, there is also an important number of Black communities. But as I said before, now there are a lot of Afro-Colombians in Medellin and obviously in Cali. The traditionalists, they have a huge Black community there, but and also in other important cities. Also, it's important to remember that this area, the Pacific region, is one of the most biodiverse regions in the world, and it has enormous potential of economic potential for different projects. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. I also want to show the other maps. This is Chocó. This is the northwest area that I pointed before. And those are some of the pictures that I brought to show you how biodiverse is that place in that area. That's the forest, which is one of the most rich forests in terms of biodiversity. Here, and this is a picture of Quibdó, which is the capital city of Chocó. Rio Sucio, and this is the Pacific Southwest. This is Tumaco, and the forest again, and some of the places there. So in the northern Pacific region, where I showed before, the department of Chocó is the capital city of Quibdó, and in the south we have the Valle, the Buenaventura city, which is the most important one. Afro-Colombians are the poorest and most marginalized members of Colombian society. At the same time, Afro-Colombians possess a rich cultural heritage. For example, in San Basilio de Palenque community, not far from Cartagena, descendants of runaway slaves still speak el palenquero, a language derived from Spanish and African languages. This is the area where is located the San Basilio de Palenque, which is originally a palenque, the first important palenque that was free from the Spanish crown, and they configured a society that became what now is San Basilio de Palenque. To understand the problems of Afro-Colombian communities, it's important to understand the historical context. While slavery was officially abolished in 1851, after 3 centuries of existence, this was not accompanied by a final compensation or other measures that would give Afro-Colombians redress for years of free forced labor that benefit the wealthiest families of Colombia. After the formal abolition of slavery, the economic system maintained Black people in conditions close to slavery during the 19th and part of the 20th century due to horrific working conditions on plantations and mines. Currently, there is no discussion of the legacy of slavery in Colombia, but Afro-Colombians continue to experience severe economic and social discrimination and marginalization, what historian Alfonso Munera has called the legacy of enslavement. With the abolition of slavery, the Pacific region that we saw at the beginning and the map was abandoned by white families due first to the social upheaval and then due to the increased labor cost for employers. Mines and agriculture were no longer profitable. Afro-Colombians established communities along rivers of the Pacific coast, pursuing a sustainable economy with the many natural resources on their disposal. Black communities did not have titles to the lands and were totally neglected by the Colombian state. Another important date is 1959, when the Colombian government adopted the law declaring that the Pacific territories as vacant land. Vacant land was for the government that was a land that of no one. So the land was government land, basically. This status means that these territories belonged to the state, and it could grant claims to companies wishing to exploit mineral and natural resources. Companies began exploiting the vast natural resources, mainly mining, and forestry. creating huge environmental problems in their wake. First, those problems were so serious that they blocked the rivers, and all the people that use the rivers couldn't use properly the rivers because the rivers were blocked with wood and etc. A lot of different troubles. This was the case of the forestry companies such as Maderas del Darién and Triplex Pisano, which entered the Pacific region, exploited its resources, but left behind few benefits for the local communities. I want to show you some of those pictures just to give you an idea what it's about. And of course, that was industrial forestry here, and there is another one here. This gave rise to the first phase of the Black movement, and that was in the 70s, with organizations from Chocó, as Asia, Ocava, Acadezan, Ovapo, and other groups working in the Buenaventura region. So we have some demonstrations of the Black people and from those organizations. They directed the criticism at the Colombian states for its collusion with multinationals and their lack of access to healthcare, education, food security, and basic services such as water and electricity. After many years of struggle, in 1993, the Colombian Congress adopted Law 70, which recognized the collective rights of Black communities to their lands that they traditionally occupy. This coincided with the period of political liberalization that also resulted in the constitutional reform of 1991. The demands of the Black communities summarize a long history of struggles and their enormous needs. Recognition of their lands, recognition of the distinct social and cultural identities of Afro-Colombian communities, the right to prior consultation for companies wanting to exploit natural resources and political representation in Congress. So Black social movement stresses the importance of political participation of Black communities locally through the community councils and nationally having won allocation of 2 seats in the Congress. The long-term political project was to get Black people out of the extreme poverty and to provide tools to assume their identity. Law 70 created a legal entity called Black communities with a distinct ethnic identity. It also recognized the inequality of the Black communities compared with the rest of the Colombian population, and undertook to rectify social and economic inequalities. This link between ethnicity and social inequality is unprecedented in the political history of the country. The jurist Carolina Valencia remarked that Colombian Constitution of 1886 did not recognize any social or economic rights and absolved the state of any responsibility to remedy the disadvantageous social treatment of the Black population. In 1993, several Black communities supported the granting of collective titles areas in the Pacific, while parameters were designed to assist community in the protection of land and natural resources. As well, the government began the implementation of the regional ethnic education programs and Afro-Colombian studies in the education system. One example is the Palenquero language that I mentioned previously in San Basilio de Palenque. This language was stigmatized and devalued for generations, but is now considered as an important part of the Colombian cultural heritage and is taught in the public schools of Palenque. In my book, I included a testimony of Dorina Hernandez, who accomplished important work bringing the Palenquero language into the schools of Palenque, and then helped establish Afro-Colombian studies in the school system. Because she helped the government in the Ministerio de Educación to help to implement other programs in the schools. And she's one of the most important persons that have been done that work. Law 70 helped stimulate a major debate on collective rights of Black communities and was heavily influenced by the demands of the movements in the Chocó region, the movements in the 70s. It was also supported by groups such as Procesos of Black Communities, the PCN. I think in Concordia here you had, as a guest speaker, Carlos Rosero, and he came talking about the PCN and the work that they have been done. And they have been working in Buenaventura and other areas, and also in Bogotá. It was also supported by them, by the PCN, whose work focuses in Buenaventura region. The PCN has a unique potential agenda. The PCN has a unique political agenda that links identity and difference to regional, social, cultural, and economic practices. They are very original because they work the social issues and also the cultural issues together. They link both of them, which is very interesting. My book describes the powerful testimonies of two of the most prominent leaders, Carlos Rosero and Livia Grueso. The violence of the 1990s fractured the stability of the collective territories, which were threatened by the terror of armed groups like guerrillas and paramilitaries, who were fighting for the control of drug production and trafficking. We can talk a little bit about that later. In this struggle, Afro-Colombians have been victims of at least 20 massacres between 1997 and 2005. The Bojayá massacre of 2002 left a toll of 119 dead and 48 wounded, as a civilian population fell victim to armed conflict between guerrillas and paramilitaries when a church where villagers had taken refuge was tortured. After this massacre, 2,000 people left the region. This is an example, a typical example of what happened with a massacre. Massacres and assassination of the leaders have been a form of intimidation to frighten civilians and make them abandon their lands, which are then occupied by armed groups, mainly paramilitary forces that practice African palm and coca monoculture. I want to show a set of pictures now that will show, well, first of all, many of the massacres, like the massacre of Rio Sucio, start 2 weeks before, and 2 weeks before the army was present in the town. And then the paramilitaries came, and that's a pattern. The other thing that happens very frequently in the massacres is that the places where the paramilitarian goes, they have to cross for some places where the army is installed, and the army just leave them to go in the towns or in the places where they want to go. So there is a complicity between the army, obviously, and the paramilitarians. This is the church of Bojaya that I mentioned before. That was a case that made an international scandal because the guerrilla and the paramilitarians were there. And of course, both of them had the interventions that were very, very complex in the area. This is a picture of the paramilitarians. As you see, their faces are covered. And this is just a picture of the army. That is, and this is a paramilitary. And of course, those are the victims. And this is the massacre de El Naya. It was also a massacre that was very, very difficult, as it's in the south. And this is more recent. This is Tumaco, which is now is a hot area where where there is everything. There is mining, there is fumigations, there is paramilitary, and there is a lot of companies. There is all kind of things that happen there. We can put together all the problems, the Colombian problems, and they're all in Tumaco right now. This is after the bomb in Tumaco too, and this is people. And this is when the community leaves the towns. There's a picture. Also, community living. And how they live at the places where they used to live empty. A lot of villages stay empty. Okay. My book tells the testimony of one community leader, Marino Cordova, who survived the massacre of Rio Sucio and 5 assassination attempts. And now he lives in exile in USA. The statistics of displacement in Colombia show that the blacks accounts for 22.5% of the total displaced population. Having been displaced, black communities face economic uncertainty in the city slums. The process of forced displacement of civilian population has occurred without adequate protective measures undertaken by the government authorities. Displaced communities have encountered great difficulties in their efforts to return to their lands, given the weak government initiative regarding the restitutions and community restitutions of their lands and community support, of course. In spite of many difficult and ongoing repression, it must be emphasized that the Law 70 has been an important achievement of Black communities in Colombia. It is a necessary tool to remedy the historical lack of recognition of Black communities as an ethnic group with collective rights. There is no doubt that the commitment of the Colombian state to Black communities continue to evolve through a long, arduous process of cooperation between the state and the communities, of course. The Afro-Des movement, founded in 1999 in the capital city of Bogota, has taken an important leadership role in doing advocacy for the rights of internal refugees. They also work in Washington, D.C. They have Afro-Des USA, and they also have this is another chapter of the movement in Washington. Afro-Des has denounced displacement as a way of expropriating the land of Black communities and as a practice that has reinforced the racism that Black communities have suffered for centuries. Colombia has the second highest number of internal refugees of any country in the world, affecting many indigenous and Afro-Colombian communities, particularly in the Pacific area. 79% of the population living on the lands with collective titles have been displaced. These communities live in extremely precarious conditions. Several international organizations, including Amnesty International, and Human Rights Watch, have characterized this as a humanitarian crisis. Displacement of Black communities has affected families' structures, while most have been men between the victims. Most have been men. Black women have also been gravely affected. 31% have been physically assaulted during the displacement, and 20% of the women report being victims of sexual assault. Well, these massive human rights violations were occurring successively. Governments, I will say since 1992 that starts those massacres, have pursued neoliberal privatization policies that have deepened inequalities, contribute to the violence affecting Colombian communities. So the attitude of the states is ignore this situation and to work in a line of putting in place a neoliberal economy that affect the Pacific coast and the Atlantic coast and all the communities of Black communities. In spite of the widespread opposition from the Canadian labor, human rights and social movements, Colombia signed a free trade agreement with government of Canada in 2011, that was with the support of the conservative and liberal parties of Canada. Another free trade agreement was signed with the United States in 2012. These agreements with the USA and Canada will accelerate mining and natural resource extraction of the Pacific region. We all know what is happening with the mining companies in Canada. And of course, everything, this situation constitutes a grave threat to the environment and to the survival of the Afro-Colombian communities. The neoliberal economic project of the Colombian state is an alliance between the most powerful interests, paramilitaries, the state's security apparatus, elements with the Colombian Congress and the government bureaucracy. The paramilitary project and its growth into a so-called parapolitics or parapolitica in Spanish, which is the paramilitary influence on the Colombian political system, has been used to forcibly implement unpopular neoliberal policies and has implemented attempts to bypass Colombian governments to support and defend Black communities against paramilitary violence. Paramilitary groups still wield tremendous power over local and national policies, while has compromised attempts by the international displaced to return to their communities. In addition, there is a little state presence in the rural areas, and once communities return to their lands, paramilitaries terrorize them with impunity. Colombia remains a deeply divided country, and the center of that division lie exclusion and racism, which a lot of Black movements link. They put it together: exclusion, economical exclusion, and racism. On the 70th anniversary on the adoption of the Law 70, anthropologist Jaime Arocha stated, "For almost Black people, Afro-Colombians, palenqueros, raizales, which are native of the island, the San Andrés y Providencia, this celebration is tarnished by violence, territorial dispossession, exile, and racism." Can see another. This is the people that are in displaced in the cities. We see a lot of women. In many cities, big cities, in Bogotá, in Medellín, Cali, it's very, very frequent to see that type of scenes. In the lights, there is actually a film about it, a very interesting film, an Afro-Colombian film, that talk about people that are in the streets, in the lights, and they do all kind of presentations, music, and this is just the way for them to live, because they collect money from that type of activities. They sing in the buses. They are across the city doing all kind of jobs that they could do to survive. Also, they also have a lot of troubles with the type of food and with housing, and because they cannot get the same food that they used to have, so they cannot eat properly as they used to eat, and the government has a lot of change a little bit the laws, but basically they are still in very difficult conditions. This is a man that is selling teachers. This is in Medellin, community of the displaced people. This is basically an slum in Buenaventura. Today, Black communities remain vulnerable. Demands continue to circulate on the internet that the harassment of Black leaders and their communities must cease. Black organizations continue to work tirelessly, but social inequalities continue. The 2005 census revealed that Afro-Colombians are much more impoverished. If 40.7% of Colombians live in extreme poverty, the average for Black communities is 40.7%. As long this difference persists in the Colombian Afro-Colombian leaders will continue talking about institutionalized racism that perpetuates the legacy of slavery. The Afro-Colombian historian Alfonso Munera pointed out that the exclusion of Black communities parallels the failure of the Colombian nation. Colombia, for Alfonso Munera, is a failed state. It has failed to be a plural democracy that represents the cultural diversity of its people. In an attempt to counter this failure, the organizational process of Black movements and communities have come to be part of the political landscape of Colombia by exercising their leadership role in their collective rights. Despite the delays and obstacles and repression, Black communities continue to defend a political agenda that calls for social justice. The agenda for social justice not only responds to the needs of their own communities, it is an urgent call for democracy for all Colombians. Just wanna finish with a set of pictures of the Afro-Colombian leaders that are still resisting. There is a lot of that have been happening about information of the communities. Communities need to be informed of what is going on with the what is being a refugee, what is a victim, because people tend to continue with their lives, but one of the work that the leaders have been done is to work with people and to let them know what are their rights and how they can get them. This is a community that is working too on that. And this is at the women demonstration. This is in Yolombo, in El Valle. And this is a picture of some of the leaders of the community. This is in Bogota. Some of them are part of my book. And this is it, and thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, María Inés. Thank you very much. So we have a few minutes for comments, questions. We accept comments and questions in English, French, Spanish, and Valenciano.
No sabe.
Buenos días, gracias. Catarina Vallejo from the department. Thank you very much. In my course this week, we were just dealing with Colombia. You've mentioned a number of things that some of my students have actually been working on the Afro-Colombianismo. I was just wondering what relationship is there between this movement and any of the indigenous populations? Is there any kind of integration? Are they working together? What is the attitude of the government towards the indigenous populations? Has there been a law like the Law 70?
It's a very important question because a lot of the Black communities and their leaders, they have been working with the indigenous people, and actually they learn a lot from them and from their organization because they have more background and more years working, and then they help a lot the Black communities. And also, what I can tell you is that specifically for the Constitution in 1991, they opened an assembly and a forum, and they had help from indigenous people, and actually they learned a lot. And it depends of who is working with who, because we cannot say that all the Black communities are the same. There are a lot of difference between them, but most of the Black organizations have experience working with the indigenous people, and they learn a lot from them for their organization. Diles que en inglés, en francés. Diles en francés también. Pueden hacerlo en francés.
Hi, Hugh Hazelton. I have a question about, I'd read quite a bit. Now the situation seems to have calmed down a little bit as far as the paramilitaries go, but I remember reading 5 or 6 years ago about massive takeovers of land in the Chocó and so on, land that had previously been not of great interest to, in general, to Colombian entrepreneurs and businessmen, and suddenly, there were minerals found there and so on. So basically, I guess they took advantage of the chaos that was going on and moved in paramilitaries, and huge amounts of land were lost by the people who had lived there for centuries. And are these people in any way going to be able to get this land back? Or are they just permanently marginalized even further into becoming migrants to urban areas and stuff?
Well, what happened is that the Colombian government, and at the end of the last government of Presidente Uribe and now Presidente Santos, they have been done some restitution of the lands. So what happened is that the community can go back to their lands. That's what they do sometimes. But they don't have enough support from the military forces, and they don't stay long for a lot of time. And also the paramilitarians are already installed in those properties, in those lands. So it makes things very difficult for the community. And what happened is that most of the paramilitary groups that went to in the program that the government designed so they gave the arms and everything, but they kind of recycle themselves in other groups. So now they have Las Águilas Negras, Los Rastrojos, and other groups that are very active in those communities. So it's very hard for the population to deal with that situation, and they have ties with the politicians and with all kind of politicians, and that was the huge scandal that we had in the past years. That was the scandals of Parapolitica, that was basically people that have ties with the paramilitarians and the government and the public positions in the government, and very high positions sometimes. So it's very complicated, the situation. And the history of this is very complicated because there is, in the past we have that, what happened with the Unión Patriótica. They basically eliminate a political party, and then that political party, it was a left-wing party that was just eliminated, and then the strategy was to work with the paramilitarians. They eliminate that political party, and then the people that sent to them to eliminate that political party are now in power. So it's very complex, the situation. And we also have the drugs between, and everybody is interested in getting a part of that. I just want to show you the first map. Here, how do you press on the whole pad? This one? Okay, thank you. So we didn't know at the beginning of this trouble what was going on, why the paramilitarians came in that region. We didn't know. We didn't know because that was a region where the guerrilla was present, but there was not left-wing parties or paramilitarians there. So people didn't know why the paramilitarians were interested in that area. And what happened is that this area here that goes from the south to Panama is an strategic area for the trafficking for drugs. So now we know why was that they were interested in that area. So it's for the drug trade that that is. So it's not an easy problem. In Colombia, there is a lot of factors that are implied in this violence, which makes things very difficult.
You did not talk much about the guerrilla. What's the link between the guerrilla and the Afro-Colombians?
I don't think Afro-Colombians are necessarily linked with the guerrilla. No. I think some of them in some. I mean, it's Colombia is big. I mean, it's not such an easy and I don't want to make a generalization. But what is true is that most of the black communities, they don't want armed actors in their lands. They don't want guerrilla and they don't want paramilitaries. They wanna have their lands out of that, and they also don't want palma africana and they don't want coca. Actually, they wanna live in peace. That's for sure. But if you live in Colombia, I can tell you something that is kind of difficult to experiment when you live in such a country. If you talk something that sounds that you are doing a kind of defense of some left position, so they're going to say, "Oh, you are guerrilla. You are from the guerrilla." So it's impossible to be in a position where you don't want to have anything related with the paramilitarians and you don't want to have any related with the guerrilla. And that's what happened with the communities. They don't want arms. They want to be free, and they want to be free in the sense that they want to have control on his territory, in their land. But the land became strategic for many people. I mean, for the companies and for people that wanna deal with drugs. So it's kind of complicated. It's not an easy situation. Con gusto.
No, mi pregunta es sobre... Bueno, mi nombre es Vilma, soy estudiante y quisiera que nos hablara un poco de la relación con los líderes. ¿Cómo fue el proceso, las entrevistas, cómo se sintieron los líderes y si ellos están de alguna manera satisfechos con el testimonio publicado? Si es que ellos tienen, qué tipo de relación tienen. Y porque hemos venido discutiendo mucho la relación entre entrevistador y la persona que da el testimonio y, bueno, estamos, por lo menos el equipo.
Bueno, yo creo que uno cuando hace este tipo de trabajo sobre todo, tiene que haber una relación de confianza. Una cosa que yo siempre me he preguntado y que no es fácil hacerla y que trabajo mucho en mis cursos de testimonio es el tipo de relación que uno tiene, porque yo creo que uno tiene que estar muy consciente de qué es lo que uno quiere, y tiene que estar consciente de que lo que uno quiere, de alguna manera, tiene que entrar en relación con lo que ellos quieren. Yo no pretendo que todo lo que yo quiero es lo que ellos quieren y todo lo que yo quiero es lo que necesariamente ellos hubieran querido. Entonces, la relación es una relación muy compleja, diría yo. Los resultados para mí son positivos, han sido muy positivos. Lo que yo puedo decir es que la relación entre los líderes y lo que yo he hecho es que yo he tratado de alguna manera de ser instrumento de ellos y sin embargo hay momentos en que puede haber ciertas presiones, por ejemplo, para que hagas esto, para que hagas lo otro, y uno tiene que tener la suficiente cordura y tolerancia para decir esto es aceptable y esto no. Y yo creo que ahí hay un punto de mediación entre lo que uno tiene que trabajar como instrumento de lo que se está haciendo, pero también uno tiene que tener un criterio. Y eso para mí es supremamente importante. A ver, ¿qué puedo decir? Uno puede tener, por ejemplo, presiones de que durante las entrevistas te pueden decir, y insistir mucho sobre un punto que una persona quiere que uno ponga. Y resulta que por una u otra razón no necesariamente es algo que es pertinente o importante. Y creo que uno tiene que tener el carácter para decir esto no me interesa, ¿no? Entonces no es una relación que yo pueda definir blanco y negro, es muy matizada y no es fácil tampoco. Y bueno, yo creo que los resultados han sido bien y creo que me voy por satisfecha hasta ahora de lo que ha... El libro acaba de salir, no tiene mucho tiempo, pero de pronto me parece muy importante ese espacio de construir una mediación en donde logremos oír las voces de las comunidades, ¿no? En la academia estamos muy centrados sobre nosotros mismos. En la academia, desafortunadamente, a veces construimos espacios muy cerrados, de poca interacción con las comunidades, y me parece que un espacio de estos es justamente una apertura hacia otras comunidades, hacia darle la palabra a otras comunidades. Yo no sé si eso resuelve toda tu pregunta, pero sí.
¿Usted cree entonces que eso es una manera de pasar a la otra orilla? ¿Nos ayuda? De subalternos a la otra orilla.
Lo de pasar al otro día viene del famoso artículo de Spivak. Antes de Walter Spivak, ella habla de la posibilidad o la imposibilidad de pasar a la otra orilla.
Yo no estoy de acuerdo con lo que Spivak dice. Yo creo que ella radicaliza muchas veces esa posición y no entiende que hay una mediación, ¿no? Ella lo que quiere mostrar es que es casi imposible básicamente construir la relación y yo no estoy de acuerdo con eso. Yo creo que ella lo dice también desde una academia cerrada. Su posición está en una academia cerrada, desafortunadamente. Yo no estoy de acuerdo con lo que ella dice. Yo no creo que la academia no tenga ese rol de construir puentes y por lo menos no tenga esa posibilidad de entrar a hacer eso, ¿no? Una de las cosas que yo hice en este libro fue hacer la publicación en español, porque uno de las reclamos que tuve, por ejemplo, de un líder que estuvo en uno de los congresos en la Asociación Canadiense de Hispanistas, como fue Livia Grueso, es que se saca el material de los países y se lo convierte en un libro muy prestigioso, publicado en una universidad estadounidense o europea, y la comunidad que dio toda su fuerza allí, ¿no?, ni siquiera puede leerlo, porque allí, pues, además está traducido en otra lengua que ni siquiera se toman el trabajo de devolverle el trabajo que la comunidad ha hecho para que eso se revierta en que la comunidad misma pueda elaborar algo sobre eso. Yo tengo muchas preguntas sobre eso y creo que una manera de devolverle el trabajo a la comunidad es justamente publicarlo en una lengua que sea accesible a ellos. Una de las cosas que ellos planteaban siempre es que nosotros somos diferentes. Todo el mundo habla de afro-colombianos, como si fuéramos un grupo completamente homogéneo. Y resulta que hay muchas diferencias internas y entre ellos hay muchas cosas que no son resueltas. Sin embargo, para las cosas, estas como son la violencia, el desplazamiento forzado, todo eso, todos se unen porque es una misma causa. Pero también hay diferencias internas y ellos lo reconocen y también no solamente lo reconocen, sino que se quieren conocer, porque ellos no han hecho todo ese proceso de conocimiento de ellos mismos. Y una cosa que pasó y que ha pasado es que pues ha habido todo un trabajo en donde las comunidades no se sienten valorizadas. Entonces muchos de ellos dicen, bueno, ser negro en Colombia es algo que no es fácil y que está estigmatizado. Y una de las cosas que ellos justamente quieren es valorizar el hecho de ser negro, darle una posición en donde ellos sean parte de una sociedad considerados como ciudadanos con diferencias, pero... Y bueno, políticamente adentro, también dentro de las comunidades hay muchas diferencias también. ¿No?
Yo sé. Bueno, muchas gracias por la presentación. Soy Roberto Vierek. claro, el tema de la reciprocidad en el mundo indígena. Bueno, ya que estamos, well, we are in Spanish now. I'm going to continue in Spanish. Well, no, I'm not going that far. I can't. Entonces, no, el tema, decía, de la reciprocidad en el mundo indígena es sin duda uno de los temas sensibles, ¿no? Siempre pasa esto, y esto viene ocurriendo hace mucho tiempo, ¿no? Esto de que llega el antropólogo, hace sus entrevistas y saca el material y después nadie se acuerda de nosotros, dicen, ¿no? Y es algo muy sensible y algo que cualquier persona que quiera trabajar en estos temas debiera tener siempre en cuenta, creo yo, ¿no? De conocer primero algunas de las claves del mundo indígena antes de entrar ahí. Pero mi pregunta tiene que ver con el éxito económico que ha tenido Colombia en los últimos años. Y me pregunto si tuviste, o sea, si en tu libro de alguna forma se establece algún tipo de correlación entre esta situación desastrosa, ¿no? de verdadero de ataque, ¿no? y de desplazamientos, ¿no? que tú has retratado, especialmente focalizado sobre la comunidad negra, ¿no? indígena de Colombia. Si se establece o tuviste la oportunidad de ver alguna correlación entre el éxito macroeconómico de Colombia en la región y esta situación de ataque, ¿no? de desplazamientos y de destrucción, en definitiva, del mundo indígena en Colombia.
Pues yo creo que el éxito ha sido más reciente. El éxito de Colombia ha sido, digamos, está poniéndose bastante exitoso el país con todos estos, además, acuerdos internacionales, todos esos free trade agreements que están ahora, y con toda esta ponerse, digamos, en lo que se ha llamado la modernidad. Y sin embargo, yo creo que toda esta idea de éxito es muy relativa y yo la cuestiono. Toda esta idea de éxito que de hecho está basado en toda esta idea del progreso. Aquí yo citaría de cerca las investigaciones de Arturo Escobar, que uno de los ejes de su investigación es sobre esta idea del progreso, del progreso, entre comillas, económicos, donde él muestra que el progreso ha servido primero a los países que han tenido el famoso progreso y después para que los países que supuestamente no tienen el progreso copien ese modelo económico de ese famoso progreso. Yo creo, digamos, que esta idea del progreso de los trabajos de Arturo Escobar, antropólogo que trabaja en la Universidad de North Carolina, es justamente una clave para mostrarle a las comunidades negras, y ese es el trabajo que además él ha hecho, porque él también ha trabajado con las comunidades negras de muy cerca, ¿va? Porque las comunidades negras, especialmente el PCN, ha trabajado con él, es ayudarles a ellos a entender que lo que se entiende por progreso a corto término, o sea, que entre la compañía explotadora de minas y que llegue al río de la comunidad, revuelva el río y saque todo el oro, que eso no es bueno para la comunidad y que está basado en una visión de lo que ellos se llama progreso a corto término, que resulta nefasta para el medio ambiente y para la vida de la gente que vive en las comunidades negras. Entonces, yo, digamos, esta idea de la modernidad y el progreso, pues yo pienso que definitivamente no entra. Y si hablamos de modernidad y de progreso, probablemente es para una gente, pero no para todo el mundo. Y no hay democracia. Yo lo comparo mucho con lo que ha pasado o lo que pasó en Chile, ¿no? Me parece muy, muy similar la situación, ¿no? Porque lo que se hizo durante el gobierno, bueno, todos los gobiernos, un poco los gobiernos anteriores al gobierno del presidente Uribe, fue militarizar y militarizar, ¿no? Un poco Chile, limpiar, ¿verdad? Lo que ellos llaman limpiar, ¿no? Y después meter las compañías. Y eso es lo que ellos están haciendo. Ahora, ¿quién tiene el progreso? Ellos no van a tener el progreso, ellos van a tener la miseria, ¿no? Porque ellos ya han experimentado esto en sus comunidades, especialmente todas las comunidades del Pacífico, y no, definitivamente pues lo que se llama progreso y lo que se llama modernidad y el desarrollo económico no ha sido particularmente para ellos, ¿no? Entonces ahí yo creo que además las comunidades negras tienen que debatir ese punto, y eso es lo que a mí me parece más importante, que las comunidades negras hagan un debate sobre eso.
No, es indudable que obviamente no son ellos los principales beneficiados del progreso, ¿no? Eso está claro. Y desde la racionalidad, obviamente, indígena, obviamente el concepto de progreso se ve distinto. Pero llama la atención, ¿no?, que desde la conquista, ¿no?, los grandes triunfos, las grandes victorias coinciden también con las grandes derrotas. Y estos van dejando, ¿no?, una estela de damnificados, ¿no?, estos grandes triunfos macroeconómicos, estos grandes éxitos que obviamente no son éxitos para quienes están sufriendo, ¿no?, el éxito de los otros. Y me preguntaba si en tu libro había alguna reflexión directa sobre esto, porque me llama la atención, ¿no?, cómo cuando aparece Colombia como el tercero o el cuarto país, ahora está posicionándose macroeconómicamente hacia el tercer, después de Brasil y Chile, ¿no?, y compitiendo con Perú, ¿no?, en una posición económica muy fuerte en la región. ¿Cómo se empiezan a intensificar estas situaciones, ¿no?, de extracción, penetración del capital, y con las consecuencias humanas, geográficamente humanas que hemos visto en tu presentación?
Claro.
Y también parece que hay una coincidencia entre esas dos cosas.
Y también la responsabilidad de los gobiernos afuera, ¿no? Porque estos free trade agreements, estos tratados de libre intercambio comercial, realmente comprometen a los otros países. Por ejemplo, cómo es la situación de Canadá, y cada vez se está hablando más del tema sobre la minería en Canadá, ¿no? En donde Canadá está llevando estos proyectos a América Latina, particularmente a Colombia, en donde hay varios de estos, pero no exclusivamente a Colombia, México, El Salvador, Panamá, Perú.
Ya que mencionaste a Chile, en Chile también, sí. La extracción de oro principalmente está en manos de compañías canadienses y han focalizado en Chile porque las leyes del royalty chileno lo ponen por el 3%. Se pueden llevar absolutamente todo, dejando prácticamente casi nada en el país. Por eso, así se ha desarrollado Chile, ya que mencionaste a Chile y hiciste referencias a la dictadura de Pinochet. Obviamente, claro, fue una dictadura, digamos, de estilo fascista, pero muy alineada con el neoliberalismo. Eso era lo raro, digamos, lo sui generis, ¿no?, de esa dictadura. Preparó el terreno para poder abrir las puertas a la penetración del capital extranjero, mucho antes que otros países en la región. Por eso, ¿no?, decía hasta George Bush, ¿no?, en Estados Unidos, que Chile era un modelo. Debía ser un modelo porque era el único país que en el mundo lo había privatizado todo.
Claro.
Y sea, más que Estados Unidos incluso.
Claro.
Pero bueno. No, claro, eso es a la vanguardia, digamos.
Ahora, una cosa que hay en esto que me parece súper importante es como que no tenemos necesariamente que echarle toda la culpa a los gobiernos, porque estamos en un país en donde, bueno, yo me he enterado recientemente en un libro y en unas conferencias que he ido, es cómo los canadienses contribuimos por ejemplo, con nuestros ahorros a las compañías mineras, ¿no? Y entonces, ¿cómo es que estamos haciendo nosotros el trabajo sucio de darle nuestro dinero ahorrado que los organismos financieros invierten en las minas que van a África a hacer todos los desastres que hacen en África y en América Latina? Y estamos nosotros ahí también. Ahora, de alguna manera, es nuestra responsabilidad decir dónde se está invirtiendo el dinero nuestro, ¿no? Entonces, no es como... Y es un poco toda la estrategia que nosotros teníamos para el trabajo político que hacíamos en Estados Unidos, ¿no? Y es sensibilizar a la opinión pública de que el gobierno está haciendo algo, ¿no? Algo que no es correcto, y la opinión pública tiene que hacer presión ¿en quién? En el gobierno. Pero no sirve de nada que le pongamos todo el agua sucia al gobierno, ¿no? Porque nosotros también estamos haciendo una parte, ¿no? Entonces, de ahí yo sí creo que la academia realmente tiene que hacer mucho trabajo.
¿Más preguntas? More questions?
Buenas tardes, profesor Augusto Gutiérrez, estudiante. Mi pregunta está relacionada sobre todo con el tema de los grupos subalternos, ¿no? Siguiendo la línea, el hilo conductor, o sea, de que la pregunta, ¿no?, que se hace Spivak, de que si pueden o no, o si puede o no hablar el sujeto subalterno. En relación a esto, mi pregunta es, según su experiencia, ¿usted se dio cuenta o usted nos podría decir si existe un intento o una iniciativa por parte de estos grupos afrocolombianos digamos, expresar, ¿no?, digamos, de utilizar ciertos medios a los cuales ellos han sido completamente marginados y de apropiarse de estos medios para de alguna manera vehicular lo que les ocurre a estas comunidades, ¿no? Uh-huh. O sea, como una contrarrespuesta a no los intentos, pero la manera en que la academia, los antropólogos, o sea, el occidente se ha apropiado de esta voz y la ha ajustado, ¿no?, según sus ideologías, etcétera, etcétera. Uh-huh.
Bueno, yo respondería y casi que diría aquí un poco breve, porque yo no estoy de acuerdo, como ya dije antes, con Spivak. Y a la pregunta de Spivak, ¿puede hablar el subalterno? Yo diría, más bien preguntaría, ¿podemos escuchar al subalterno? Porque yo creo que no tenemos condiciones en las universidades, porque estamos construyendo saberes cada vez más encerrados en sí mismos para justamente escuchar al subalterno. Ahora, el otro lado de su pregunta es si los subalternos, en este caso los grupos de los líderes de comunidades afrocolombianas, están haciendo algún trabajo, y mi respuesta es sí, y mucho. Ahí está el grupo de Afrodes, como dije, en Washington, D.C. Está varios otros grupos en Washington, D.C. Está también gente del PCN, que participan, líderes del PCN en Washington. Constantemente están haciendo giras por Europa, por Estados Unidos, y también están haciendo un trabajo fuertísimo de activismo en donde les abran puertas. Otra vez, podemos escuchar al subalterno, y es ahí en donde me parece que la academia tiene que construir los puentes mediadores para escucharlo, porque hablar cualquiera habla, pero escuchar tiene uno que estar escuchado, ¿no? Entonces es ahí donde yo pienso que tenemos que enfatizar.
Okay, maybe one more question there.
Más que una pregunta, ¿necesito el micrófono o no? Bueno, más que una pregunta es agradecerle por ese gran trabajo y aclarar algunos aspectos. Por ejemplo, cuando hablaban del movimiento africano y afrocolombiano, surgimiento y hablando de la historia. Entonces, cuando hablaba y hacía referencia a la Constitución del 91, por ejemplo, hay que reconocer que uno de los líderes del movimiento que realmente puso en crisis el gobierno colombiano fue Jaime Bateman Cayón, que era un afro-colombiano, líder del movimiento M19, que logró ese movimiento en cierta forma cambiar, hacer una presión para cambiar la Constitución. Y en esa Constitución se le dio el espacio abierto a los movimientos, no solamente afro-colombianos, pero aquellos que quieren llamarlos subalternos tenían esa cuestión. Ese es el primer punto. Segundo punto, cuando hacían referencia de por qué la riqueza económica o la cuestión económica de Colombia. Claro, es evidentemente, cuando tú mencionabas la cuestión de Chocó, era la palma africana que estaba en juego. ¿Y por qué se ataca la palma africana o el sector de Chocó solamente después de los 90? Simplemente porque antes ya habían acabado y habían controlado toda la cuestión donde estaba el sector indígena, los sectores menos favorecidos, y aquí entran a la cuestión afroafricana, que como lo explicas, el Chocó tiene esa doble funcionalidad para la cuestión del narcotráfico, que el paramilitarismo llega. ¿Y qué pasa con el paramilitarismo? Es una cuestión oficial del expresidente Uribe. Él era el primer fundador del paramilitarismo y uno de los narcotraficantes que la DEA lo declara como tal. Entonces, cuando se habla de todo el proceso paramilitar que se instala en Colombia, es gracias al gobierno que lo instala. Y durante 2 periodos presidenciales se implementa eso. Entonces, por eso es que toda la estructura paramilitar está en el gobierno. ¿Por qué la gente no ha podido regresar todos esos desplazados? Simplemente porque la estructura del gobierno, cuando desplazan a la gente, pone la palma africana, pone la riqueza a funcionar, evidentemente desplazan a la gente y la gente está todavía desplazada, como tú lo mencionabas. Entonces es un problema económico, por ello es que hay riqueza, pero ¿riqueza para quién? Para la minoría que controla, sigue controlando todo. Pero Colombia tiene un porcentaje de más de 40-50% de gente bajo la pobreza. Entonces, todo es bastante relativo en ese sentido. Bueno, de todas formas era para eso, no quería hacerte una pregunta, sino muchas gracias por la información.
Yo me gustaría decir que el asunto de la palma africana, además que el proyecto de palma africana fue un proyecto que hizo el presidente Uribe como un cultivo de sustitución. Ahora, el cultivo de sustitución tiene todo el agravante. Primero, genera la monocultura. La monocultura es muy complicada para las comunidades negras y para las comunidades indígenas, porque las comunidades indígenas viven en un territorio en donde hay una diversidad de productos y la palma africana simplemente es un extraño dentro de eso, y las comunidades definitivamente no pueden comer palma africana y eso. Además, los paramilitares empezaron a sembrar palma africana, pero la palma africana era simplemente una excusa porque ellos también tenían todos los cultivos ilícitos al mismo tiempo, presentaban a la opinión pública, nosotros estamos sembrando palma africana, y no era cierto. Ellos estaban también sembrando coca y era una manera de mantener las dos cosas. Y la palma africana de ninguna manera es una solución para absolutamente nadie. Ha sido un gran error, ¿no? Claro, totalmente, para decir que había un cultivo de sustitución, lo cual es mentira.
Yes. Do you want to ask a question? Thank you very much.
Thank you.